We are spending this entire month marking 10 years in Epic Church's existence. And we want you to know that it is not lost on us that we're celebrating this significant milestone in our church's life in the middle of a very hard season. But if we've learned anything over the past year, and we've learned so many things over the past year, one of those big learnings is this, that there can be coexisting realities present. So yes, it is heavy and it is hard. To be honest, the front end of this week was one of the hardest times of my 10 years in San Francisco, and that's saying quite a bit. But we would miss out on a massive opportunity if even in the middle of the hard, we didn't pause and celebrate God's faithfulness over this past decade. Thrilled today to be joined by our community pastor, Lindsey Lee. Lindsey, you have been a part of this epic journey from day one. And, by way of introduction and reflection, has anything at all changed for you from that day one to 10 years later?
Wow, yes, so much has changed in 10 years. We've added 2 kids to our family since we've been here in 10 years. We've gone from a 430 square foot studio apartment to a house, which now holds those 2 kids. But as I reflect on 10 years, I remember first moving to the city and feeling so overwhelmed, just walking downtown, figuring out Muni, going grocery shopping. And now 10 years in, we've built this life with people that we love, and we can just honestly say that San Francisco has become home.
That's awesome. So February 13th, 2011, Epic Church was launched. Like, it worked. Surprise, surprise, if you didn't know, it did work. This new church was off the ground in the heart of downtown San Francisco, but in so many ways, the work was just beginning. Last week, my wife Shauna and I talked about the launch phase, and today, Lindsey and I want to cover the build phase when we realize, hey, okay, it's off the ground, but it's not going to just take care of itself. We need to get into this building phase. And we recognize that we're celebrating Epic's 10 years all month long. At the same time, we notice and see and want to celebrate that it's Black History Month. And one of the things we want to do over this month is recognize and remember the Black experience in America, the accomplishments, the contributions, the challenges that have been faced and overcome, as well as those challenges that are still being faced.
Yeah, and when I think about the Black community here at Epic, they have made so many contributions from that very first year when we launched until now by leading in groups and in kids ministry and students and production and worship. If you're a part of the Black community here at Epic, we want you to know that we are with you. We are for you. We see you, and we love you so much. When I think about what's been built over these last 10 years, I remember also moving from, wow, I can't believe that church is actually happening, to all of a sudden thinking, how do we get all of these people who are now showing up and they're strangers to build community? And so a month after the church was launched, we started Epic Groups, our very first session of Epic Groups. And we started with just 4 groups, and they were all led by our staff. But even then, it was incredible to see 60 people show up and to be a part of this first community.
We knew that we wanted to build a community that could share their lives together and share their faith with one another. Now, let's be honest, our church has grown both in its size and in its depth, but this has been our heart and our aim from day one. We also knew, not only, Lindsey, that we needed to get people living this life and sharing their faith together, but we knew that if we were going to build a significant church, that the majority of the people involved would need to play some part in that. In fact, we really love this quote from Tricia Neal. She is the president of Alpha International. I've had the chance to meet with her over these years. And here's what she says in one of her books. She says, with the participation of the whole congregation, a church can afford a big vision.
Yeah, we knew that everyone who came, we needed them to play their part in order for us not only to build, but also to sustain these weekly Sunday gatherings and even our small groups. So we invited people to come and join be a part of a team, and help have a hand in building this new church that they were a part of. And it was also a way for people to build community at that time as well. And I remember just how willing people were to come and to just play their part in making church happen every single week. And back then, we just had one gathering. And so when someone was serving, it meant that they were giving up the chance to just sit and experience worship for themselves. And so the buy-in from early on, it still blows me away.
Yeah, so there we are. We're getting people into groups. We're getting people onto serving teams. And one of those serving teams that no longer exists, and if you're part of our church now but weren't then, you're like, I'm so glad this one doesn't still exist, but it was called the Set Up and Tear Down team. And that team would show up at the W parking lot, what is now has become the expansion of the MoMA. But that team would show up in the parking lot between 6 and 7 a.m., we'd unload everything off of those trailers. We would roll it into a service elevator at the W. We would take it up to the 3rd floor. We would walk or roll it all through the kitchen. You could see what everyone ordered for room service last night, which I'm sure was awesome last night, but not so great on a Sunday morning at 7 a.m. We would set everything up for kids as well as the worship gathering. We would do an 11 o'clock one service, like Lindsey mentioned, and then we would take it all down, back down that elevator, put it in the van and trailer, and just repeat that week after week.
Yeah, and we'll always be grateful to the W Hotel for saying yes and for allowing us to launch our church there. But we knew right away that this wasn't going to be a long-term option for us. In just a few weeks after starting, we would show up and we wouldn't always know where we were going to meet and host our gathering that morning. Sometimes it was our normal conference room, and sometimes it was the rooftop terrace, which is much more enclosed now than it used to be. Sometimes we would show up and we would have 3 kids' room and all the kids could be divided by age groups. And sometimes we would have babies and 5th graders all together.
I promise I never lost my mind during those days. Okay, maybe I did. I was like, but we have a contract. But it became clear to us that the W wasn't a long-term bet, at least not in a certainty kind of way that we would have wished. And so in the month of March, we're just 1 month old as a church. And on a Sunday morning, I got on a stage similar to this one and just said, hey, we believe that God's going to need to lead us to another space besides this one. And if you want to be a part of praying for that new space, come to mine and Shauna's apartment tonight. And about 20 people showed up, 6 p.m. that March Sunday evening. And lo and behold, one of the people who showed up was a real estate broker. And we were throwing out all the kinds of places, other hotels, theaters that we could rent for Sundays. And this guy said, have you guys ever thought about having like 24/7 space, like leasing something a little more permanent? And we had never thought about that. I mean, our idea about the future of this brand new church is that we would be a set up and tear down church for somewhere between 5 to 10 years at a minimum.
Yeah, but our new friend, Daniel, this real estate broker, he suggested, as Ben said, maybe you guys want to look into space that can be your own for 24/7. And this seemed a little bit crazy for a church that was just a month old to be looking at real estate in a city that was most expensive city in the country. But we did it anyway.
We did. He showed us a few spaces, and one of those spaces was, of course, 543 Howard Street. And I remember going into that space for the first time. For starters, it wasn't a clear pathway from when you entered the building to the 6,500 square feet that they were proposing we rent. And then you walk in, and there's just concrete everywhere, and let's be honest, it was kind of falling apart. Not exactly what I had envisioned of our church. And we're in the basement. Yes, we are the basement church, but we're praying God's going to get us out of the basement. That's a different story. That's for the future message on the 28th. But when we went in there, I just didn't know if it would work. Like, I don't know if we can do church in here, but what did you think the first time you walked into, honestly, 543 Howard Street?
Yeah, a maze would definitely be the best way to describe the path from the front door to the auditorium.
Not amazed, but a maze.
No, yes, not amazed, a maze. And, you know, I do have to be honest. When I first walked into that space, I was like, I don't see any way that this is ever going to work. You saw Will do the opening from there, cement walls. And not only throughout the auditorium, but rough cement walls in every single kid's room that we were going to have. But, you know, I also remember walking through this space and just thinking, like, this is full of possibility.
it was full of possibility, and we just began to ask, God, is this what you have for us? You know, about that time, Mark Batterson's book, The Circle Maker, came out, and one of the major emphases in his book was this idea that when you believe God's leading you to something, you know, pray physically around that space. And it's crazy that Mark, over the last couple of years, has become a friend and mentor to our team, which is super fun. Would have never imagined that back in 2011. But just walking and praying around it, I just thought, God, yeah, you're giving me this clear sense and peace that this is it. It is scary. It was making a pretty significant financial commitment when we were 1 month old as a church. But I remember God just giving us this sense of peace that this is what we should step into. And so I was all clear on that. And then I got a call from a well-meaning friend who said, Ben, I've just been thinking about that space. They had toured the space with us, and they're like, I don't think you guys should get it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, I need a minute. So I went outside. I took about an hour-long walk in Soma. And again, after getting that phone call, I didn't feel great, but God continued to give us his peace about moving forward. And so we did. We signed a lease in June of 2011, put some work into it. And August 21st, 2011, we held our very first service at 543 Howard.
Yes, and that move paid off immediately. Prior to moving into the space, we were averaging about 130 people showing up on Sundays. But as soon as we moved in, we were seeing 200 people come every single Sunday. And so in September, we added a second service. And with September also came a brand new session of small groups because, you know, we're still trying to primarily build this church through groups and teams. So now we had another session of groups coming around, and we went from 4 to 9 groups that fall, and we saw 150 people step into our small group community. And with 2 gatherings now, we could also encourage people, hey, you can come now and you can serve one, and you can also attend one gathering.
Yeah, and keep this in mind, we still had not celebrated our first birthday as a church yet. All of the things that we've said so far, we're not even 1 year old as a church. And one of the reasons we needed more volunteers as we went to 2 services is because our Epic Kids ministry began to expand. Now, all of you who know Lindsey, you know she does so much here at Epic. She has so many gifts. She oversees groups. She oversees partnerships. She has a hand in production and worship. But what you may not know, if you've only been around here for a few years, is that Lindsey Lee has the proud distinction of being our first ever Epic Kids director.
Yes, I do. And, you know, I love kids. I mean, as I said, I've got 2 of my own. I love kids. But I think we could all agree that kids ministry was not in my wheelhouse, right?
That's a true story.
But I do think...
She fired herself before I could fire her, just so you know.
Yes, it was the best day ever when that happened. But I think that, you know, we could all say that we were so pleasantly surprised by the number of kids and families who were a part of Epic, because we often heard in San Francisco, you know, hey, there's more dogs than kids in San Francisco. And once families start having kids, they move out of the city. But when we moved into 543 Howard and we had this consistent, dedicated space for kids where they could be split up into age-appropriate classrooms, things just took off. And during our time at Howard, we saw the number of kids more than double during that time.
Yeah, that was incredible. And here's the thing we knew then and we know now, and we need you to know in case you don't know. Whenever you're called to build something, you can never simply build anything for only your benefit. And we knew if we're going to build a significant church, it can't just be about those of us who are in this church community. And that was hard because when you're the new thing and you haven't celebrated your first birthday, you're like, let's just kind of make this all about us, and really with pure motives and intentions. But before we celebrated our first birthday, we decided that we need to mark the moment now and kick off a brand new initiative called the Hope Project, still called the Hope Project, which was going to fund partnerships outside of our church because we didn't want to build something significant just for us. We wanted to build something significant for our city and for the world. And it is so humbling to me, Lindsey, to think about the fact that 10 years in, the Hope Project, which is our annual initiative that funds our local, national, and global strategic partners, we have given as a church over $2 million. Just stunning. Like if Epic Church had a resume, You know how you put your kind of number one thing, like if this would be towards the top, but let's be honest, you don't get to $2 million in missional partnership overnight, do you?
No, it doesn't happen like that. And I remember the very first Hope Project. Our goal that year was $20,000, and we had 3 partnerships. And then people gave over $40,000 that first year, and we were overwhelmed by people's generosity. United Christian Center in Uganda was our very first global partnership, and we took our first trip there in 2012. We've been back 5 times since. And throughout the last 10 years, we've been able to sponsor over 200 kids at the Compassion Project there. And we have given over $100,000 to help start training schools, infrastructure for technology, and to build healthcare programs.
We're talking about this build phase very fondly. And the reason we're talking about it very fondly, not just publicly right now, but as a few of us have had conversations this week, like, it was so special to really lay the groundwork for the kind of church that we are going to be. And you're like, Ben, you're off the notes now. I am. I'm just feeling it, and I'm going for it. And I wouldn't trade those days for anything. It was exciting. We were all working in one room. We were going from 1 service to 2 services to 3 services, and we were seeing transformation. We were seeing this diverse community begin to come in. People who were black and brown, people from 50 different nations starting to show up, and such diverse backgrounds in terms of what people did vocationally. And then we started reaching people. I remember when we reached people in their 60s, and they'd be like, I'm the oldest person here. We're like, no, let us introduce you to the people in their 70s, and you'll feel young. And that began us on this trajectory of being really a church for all people. When they tell you when you plant a church or start a business, you've got to have this real targeted audience, and I'm so glad we didn't give into that. I'm not saying that's not, I'm just going for it. I'm not saying that's not right for some businesses or even some churches, but what we have seen be true is a multi-ethnic, multi-generational church emerge here in the heart of San Francisco. And I'm so glad that we didn't pick and choose, hey, I want that particular age, I want that particular color, I want that particular nationality, I want that particular industry. Nothing wrong if that's your thing, but that's not our thing. And we did, like, some of that was just by accident, right? They're like, choose your target people. We're like, the city of San Francisco. And anyone who wants to drive out from the rest of the Bay Area. So we were just going for it. And what I love, Lindsey, during the build phase and still today, we have learned so much about what it takes to build something special, whether we're talking about Epic Church or your life. And what we want to do now is transition this message and really talk about you. And we want to share some tips for what it takes to build something special and significant in your life. So what's the first one?
Yeah, be clear about the vision. When the church started growing, it would have been easy to start doing too many things or to get distracted. We had to get really clear about who we were and what we were about. And not just why we started the church, but who did we want to become in decades and decades into the future. A clear vision would direct our decisions. It would direct how we spent our time, how we spent our money, how we spent our energy, and the same is true for your life.
Yeah, so get clear about the vision, but then secondly, start bringing people into it. So here's the question for you. When you think about God's vision for your life, who do you need to invite into this vision? One of the things we love is that when God calls us into something, rarely does he ever call us to go at it alone. Yes, the old hymn says, if no one goes with me, Jesus, I'll still follow. And I'm like, yes, I'm in, but I'm so thankful that he has surrounded me with men and women and even boys and girls and teenagers to pursue this vision with. But when you think about the vision God has for your life, who do you need to invite into this vision? You need support. You need encouragement. You need people, here's how I'll say it. You need people who are for God, for you, which means they're for what God wants to do in and through your life.
Yeah, and we also need to show up every single day. None of what was built here happened overnight for us. We just kept showing up and we kept doing our part. We showed up when things seemed impossible. We showed up when things seemed hard. And do you know what happens when you keep showing up every single day for 10 years straight? This beautiful thing called compound interest takes place. we tend to overestimate what can happen in 1 year, but we really underestimate what can be built in 5 years and in 10 years.
And if you're surprised by what's been built over the last 10 years, you're not nearly as surprised as we are. But I do know this, to your point, we came. We came when we didn't like the space we were working in, when the internet wasn't working, when we didn't have enough volunteers, when we tried a 6 p.m. service and the joke was like there's more people on the stage than off the stage for the 6 p.m. We just kept showing up. So far you've got to be clear about the vision. When you think about God's vision for your life, who do you need to invite into it? She said you show up every single day, and the fourth one's a huge one from day one for us here at Epic, and it's this. Remember that without God, whatever you are building, whatever we are building, will be built in vain. If God doesn't show up, it just doesn't matter. In Psalm 127, verse 1 and 2, unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain. In vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for he grants sleep to those he loves. Long before we had our very first service, we leaned into Psalm 127, verses 1 and 2, because I didn't know a lot when I showed up to start this church in San Francisco. Our team, Lindsey, didn't know a lot. We tried to learn when we showed up in San Francisco, but here's what we knew. We are desperate for God to show up and do what we cannot do. And I want you to know this, as we're at the tail end of 1 year in this pandemic, this church, with all of us leading the way, we are still desperate for God to show up and do what only he can do. And I hope no matter how much money, no matter how many partners, no matter how many trips, how many students, how many kids, how many small groups we have, I don't care about any of that, Lindsey. I never want us to lose this. I always want us to be desperate for God to show up, because I'm not that good, Lindsey's not that good, you're not that good, our band's not that good, our leaders are not that good. We are desperate for God to show up, and church, may we never lose that.
Yeah, so what are you trying to build in your life? And are you allowing space for God to show up and to play his part? I don't know about you, but I have spent way too much time in the past building on my own. And here's what that looks like. It looks like rising early and staying up late. It looks like days that are filled with exhaustion and anxious work. I've learned that I don't want to build anything significant in my life, anything into my marriage, into my kids' future, into the city, into this church without God. And here's the great news. I don't have to, and neither do you. God wants to build something in your life. So let's have the faith to believe that he wants to do it. And let's have the courage to believe that he will finish whatever it is that he starts building.
So strong. And here's the thing. Every single one of us has an unless the Lord builds it reality over our lives. Like if God doesn't build it, it just won't matter. Rachel already mentioned this, but tomorrow night we're going to, at 5 p.m. on Epic's Facebook page, Faith and Prejudice is producing and broadcasting this film called The History of the Black Church. And I've just seen a preview of it, but what I heard them say was like, man, this was this place of solidarity. When the world was coming against us, the church became a place where businesses got started out of and movements began, and people began to realize that they weren't alone. And what was true for the Black church over the last 400 years in America, it is true for Epic Church just over our short 10 years, but it's also true over your entire life. Like, do you want to have a marriage that you're the only one building along with your spouse, or do you want to have a marriage that God is building? Do you want to have a career and vocation that you can build and be awesome, or do you want God to build that thing for you? We all have an unless the Lord builds it reality over our lives. But here's the other thing. What all of us would love to be true is for us to build something one time and just kind of set it and forget it, right? Like it'd just be like, built a marriage, done. Raised a kid, done. Right? Started a church, done. Like, I remember when we would, read about Paul or serial entrepreneurs. They're like, I'm going to go start a bunch of churches. I'm like, no, I'm a one and done kind of guy. But here we are. And we've got to rebuild this church at least to some degree. And for most of us, there's going to be something in our lives that's going to have to be rebuilt. Here's the thing. Some of you are going to have to rebuild your marriage at some point in time. Some of you are going to have to rebuild your career at some point in time. Some of you, for sure, you may be there now, are going to have to rebuild your reputation for that thing you did. You're going to have to rebuild your reputation. And all of us, Lindsey, to some degree, are going to have to help rebuild this church if we want to continue to move forward with God's vision for Epic Church and for the city of San Francisco. And I'm not afraid to make the big ask right now. I don't have all of the details because, there just aren't that many yet about the future. But when we make the ask, I want you to say, yes, Ben, Lindsey, I am in to help rebuild, and I'll play whatever part I need to, just like those people did that showed up at the W Hotel back in 2011. But Lindsey, when you think about what it took to build this the first time, I know it's like all smiles now because, people don't know if you have anything besides a smile. But when you think about what it actually took to build the church the first time, and now we kind of have to rebuild some version of it, how does that hit you?
I mean, yeah. We invested so much into building this church the first time. I mean, literally. We have given every single part of our life to this for the last 10 years. But here's what I know without a doubt. Every bit of it was worth it. Sometimes when you are in the middle of building, in the middle of investing, in the middle of pouring out, it can at times feel like a sacrifice. But when I think back over the last 10 years, sacrifice never comes to my mind. I think about what a privilege and what a blessing it is just to get to be a part of it all. I think about the joy of being in this community. I have so much gratitude for what I've seen God build in Epic Church, but not only in Epic Church, in my own life and in the lives of hundreds of other people. So, Ben, I do have a smile because when I think about rebuilding this church, I'm genuinely excited. And I'm grateful that every single one of you are going to get to be a part of it this time.
Wow, so strong, Lindsey. One day, Jesus was teaching about what it would take to follow him, like what it would take to go all in, or to use the Epic Vision language, what it would take to orient your entire life around Jesus for your entire life. And he used a building illustration. In fact, Luke records his words, Jesus' words, in Luke 14, 28 through 30. Listen to these. He said this: suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the costs to see if you have what it takes, to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. Epic, we have begun to build, but we're not finished. And I promise you, as honestly as I can tell you, on this side of the camera, I've asked God for great clarity like we did 10 years ago. God, is this still it? To be honest, in my hard moments, I just literally ask the question, anywhere else, God? And I don't know if this will make you happy or sad, but he hasn't put an inkling, an ounce of any other place, of any other role, of any other church on my heart or my mind. So I'm in. Lindsey, we talk about this a lot. I've counted the cost. I'm in. And whatever it takes for what God wants to build in my life, in my marriage, in my family, and in through Epic Church, I'm in. And one day, all of us who are in, not just to start, but to finish, we're going to hear those words. Well done, good and faithful servant. You finished the race. And so I don't know if God would bring your time to an end here in San Francisco, but I know hundreds of you watching now, even if you're not in the city while you're watching this, he's telling you right now, he's speaking to you. He's going, I'm not finished. I'm not done. We're not through with that. And if that's you, you would be so mistaken. And you would live with so much regret, I believe, if you miss out on what he wants to build through our church, if he's calling you to be a part of it. For sure, though, what he's calling you to build in your life. If you don't follow him in that, you're going to miss out. And you may ask us, like, hey, where do you guys get this confidence from? Well, we don't always have it, if we're honest, but we do have each other and the rest of our team. And here's where we get the confidence from. In Matthew 16, verse 18, Peter had just said to Jesus, Jesus, you're the Christ. Like, you're it. You're the Messiah. And Jesus had the audacity to say to Peter, Peter, you're the rock. Now, just so you know, Peter wasn't really a rock at all, but Jesus saw not who he was yet or what had been built in Peter yet, but what was going to be built in Peter. And he sees what's going to be built in you, and he sees what's going to be built in me, and he sees what's going to be built in our church and in this city for the world. But our confidence is under this statement from Jesus: I will build my church. He's not going to build Ben's church or Lindsey's church or your church or even necessarily this thing called Epic Church, although I think that's part of the plan. He's building his church. And we don't have to wonder, is he still sticking to his word after a pandemic? Yeah, he's all in. And he's speaking with authority, and the Spirit of God is going to bring to life so many dead things, I believe, and the light of God is going to pierce so much of our darkness in our world today, and I want to play my part, and I want to be here to see that come to pass.
Yeah, God is constantly building. And so we want to invite you to pray with us in just a moment and to pray in faith and to believe that, not because we can always see it. We can't always see what God is building, but because we believe that he finishes what he starts, and he's not finished yet. He is still at work. He's still at work in your life. He's still at work in our church. And so would you put your yes on the table and would you pray with us? Father, thank you so much that you are a faithful God. You are a God who keeps your promise. You can't help but be true to yourself and to your character. Thank you that your desire and your plan was to build something in us and through us and with us. So God, in faith, we put our yes on the table. God, we're saying yes to you. Whatever it is you want to build in my life, yes, I want that. God, whatever you want to build in my family, yes, I want that. God, whatever you want to build in my family, in my relationships, in my friendships, yes. Whatever you want to build in my vocation, yes. Whatever you want to build in our city and in this church, yes. We want to be a part of that. So God, we are going to take you at your word, that you finish what you start. And so with every bit of faith and courage that we have, God, we trust you. Would you come and would you continue to build something significant in us and through us? In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.